what I like best about the Terry and Jesse show is that it revives my hope in men to be godly men.
It's a really good show because it's relatable to family life, daily life. It's encouraging. It's like cheerleading also for Catholics. But number one, the reason I like it because you guys aren't afraid to speak the truth.
You are both the most compassionate hosts I've ever heard. And as a Jewish convert, I am a much better informed Catholic. Thank you, Terry and Jesse.
I just think it's the best thing that we have here in LA. It's awesome. I'm hooked.
This is the Terry and Jesse show. We invite you to this holy hour of power. We are two Catholics with a PhD in common sense. We are your spiritual fitness trainers. This is the Lord's Gym. Here is where we teach you to engage the enemies of truth with prayer, fasting, and full contact Catholicism. Our program is not right versus left. It is right versus wrong. This is blue-collar Catholicism for the blue-collar man. Back by popular demand, we've got a second interview with an incredible convert to the Catholic faith. His name is Zachary King. In fact, there was an article that just came out. It's from the Lepanto Institute. And the article is called Former Satanists, quote, I perform satanic rituals inside abortion clinics. In January 2008, Zachary King, while working at a jewelry kiosk, Zachary, he was a non-Catholic. He had an encounter with our Blessed Mother, which changed his life. Obviously, we're going to let you hear the story from him. But in the middle of the mall and through the power of the miraculous metal, Zachary King experienced a peace that surpasses all understanding. You know what? I want you guys to hear it from him. Zachary, welcome to the Terry and Jesse show.
My pleasure. Thank you for welcoming me back.
Zachary, in light of the recent videos exposing Planned Parenthood's trafficking of the organs and the tissue of preborn babies, I know there was an interview done by the Lepanto Institute, and apparently, you were just an average American boy growing up in a Baptist home. You started practicing magic at about the age of 10, and that's magic with a K at the end, and you'll tell us the difference. You ended up joining a satanic coven by the time you were 13, and you ended up breaking all the 10 commandments by the time you were an early teenager, and you worked your way up all the way to a high wizard in the Church of Satan. I know you're working on a new book. It's called Abortion is a Satanic Sacrifice. I think it's going to take the Catholic Church by storm. Zach, you've got quite a story to tell. Could you give us a little bit of the background of how you fell into Satanism?
Sure. My first experience in magic was a game at school called Bloody Mary, or I Hate You, Bloody Mary. And most people know it as a game. You go into the bathroom at school, you turn off the lights, and all the kids look in the mirror and chant, I hate you, Bloody Mary, over and over again. And the intended result is a demonic face in the mirror. But as a child at 10 years old, you're kind of told a ghost story. That, if you do the spell right, or you do the game right, a spirit's face will appear. And every time I was in the group, we always saw the demonic face. And everybody would exit the bathroom just as fast as they could go because, well, it's scary. Except for me, I would be just standing there staring at this face like, how does this happen? How is this able to be here? There's there wasn't a Spencer's Gifts with buying hologram flashlights at that time. You couldn't invent this on your own. It was just there. And, at the same time as that, I was really getting involved in playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I was always the sorcerer or the wizard in that. And then eventually, after doing so much magic in those two arenas, I was like, well, I wonder, could you do a magic spell in real life and have it work? Because if you can't, I'd probably lose all interest in doing magic. And, my parents said magic was fake. And, everybody I asked said that that's not real. It's, the stuff of movies or books or fantasy and stuff like that. No one, apparently, that I asked ever read in the Bible because there's 8 places in there that tell you not to do sorcery. Mm-hmm. And why would the Bible give you a warning against something if it wasn't real? So I did a spell in the bathroom for money. So I did a spell first for money to see, I'd figured that would be the harmless spell. Like no one gets hurt in that. But I would verify that magic was real or it was fake. And I wasn't going to tell anybody because I'm this little geeky kid and I don't want to be made fun of even more. So I do the spell for money, and the following day I go out and I find a can of tennis balls with a $5 bill in it. You know, and I'm thinking, all right, well, $5, that's better than I had yesterday when I did the spell, but that could be a coincidence. Somebody had to find that can of tennis balls with $5 in it. So the next weekend I did it again. And the next weekend I found a $10 bill on the side of the road. Yeah, I'm saying, okay, $15 in 8 days. That ain't bad. I'm 10 years old in 1976. So, you said you're a little older than me, so you know that in 1976, comic books were 20 cents.
That's right.
Candy bars were 20 cents. Penny candy was really a penny. So, I'm scoring big on all the things that I want, but still, $15, that's not really big money. So I go, I decide I'm going to up the ante. I'm going to do the same spell in the bathroom at home. I'm going to do the Bloody Mary thing. And when that face appears, I'm going to make sure it knows that I'm doing a spell for money and see if that helps move things along any. So I do that. My face appears, I do the spell, and then the next day I go out to play. And I was playing in a big parking lot. Something caught my eye. I ran over to it. And it looked like Monopoly money rolled up really tight in a bunch of rubber bands. So I put that in my pocket. I went on to play. But later that night, I'm at home under the sheets, got the flashlight in my mouth, unraveling all these things. Took off all the rubber bands, and it looked like Monopoly money because it was a $100 bill.
What?
And when I unwrapped them fully, I had 10 $100 bills. So I had $1,000.
Wow.
I was convinced at that moment that not only was magic real, but it worked every time I did it. And if I played my cards right, I could be driving a Lamborghini by the time I was 15. So, which never happened. But I still, I thought, I'm going to do this every day. And I was a little entrepreneur, right? My friends all saw me with extra cash. I had, the latest Kiss albums, because that was like my favorite band then. And the latest Kiss albums, and anything I wanted, I had. And my parents were not the type to buy me anything I wanted. So, my friends were like, how are you doing that? And I was like, well, it's kind of a secret, but I can do it for you, too, for a percentage of what you get. So I could have just as easily given them the spell and let them do it, but it wasn't me. I was like, as long as I have the power, then I have the power.
Wow.
That's the reason that most people get into Satanism is because they want power, money, or sex.
Yeah.
At 10 years old, I was interested in the money, and that went hand in hand with power. Didn't know anything about sex, so that didn't appeal to me. When I was 11, I was sexually assaulted in the bathroom at school at the hands of a female teacher. Had no idea what had happened to me or even what to say. Didn't have proper terms for anything. Thought I might have a clue as to what this was, but I know that I said the word damn or hell in front of my dad one day and got severely punished. So if I dropped the F-bomb, which was the only way I knew to describe what was happening, I was going to be killed by my dad, even if I was the victim of what was happening. And the woman had told me that it was my fault, it was my idea, I wanted to do it, so I would be to blame. So the only thing that gave me comfort then at that point was diving further into magic. At 12 years old, somebody told me they knew a group of people that believed magic was real, and they also played D&D every weekend.
And what is D&D?
So
Dungeons and Dragons, right? For everybody, yeah,
Dragons,
got it.
right.
Continue.
So I wanted to join these guys, or at least see what they were about. And going over to their house for the first time, they have an in-ground pool, a huge barbecue pit. Two things I love to do: swim, eat. They have this huge room, this like rec room, that has a pool table, pinball machines, video games, like actual arcade games, and then a big screen TV and tons of movies. And it was just like it was a recruitment for a satanic cult, but at 12 years old, you're not the sharpest tack. So, I'm just like, oh, this is cool, this is awesome, and it's boys and girls, and
Sure.
Anybody can come over anytime. Like at my house, you can have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you might get a snack if you're lucky during the day. Over here, you can have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but you can have it anytime you want. You can have a snack anytime you want. going to these guys, I got to experience, well, what feels great after you have a good meal is to smoke a cigarette. What's great here is that you should drink a beer now. You should try your first wine cooler. You should try shots. You should get drunk one time. Your parents aren't here. They're not going to know. Here, you like watching R-rated movies of science fiction and stuff. Why don't you try watching this X-rated movie and see what you think of it? Look at these magazines. Yeah, you can't look at them at your house, but over here, anything goes. Come over there to spend the night and watch a movie. And at my house, I had a 9 o'clock curfew during the week and 11 o'clock on the weekends. Well, over there, you just stay up until you pass out.
Zachary,
if you can stay up all night, great.
Yeah. Zachary, we're going to have to break for a quick break. But, man, this is a fascinating story. We're going to continue right after the break. Folks, those who've just tuned in, this is the Terry and Jesse Show. We're interviewing Zachary King, former Satanist who used to perform satanic rituals inside abortion clinics. He's talking about how he grew up and how he got involved in the satanic cults. I'm giving away a DVD called What Every Catholic Needs to Know About Hell by Dr. Scott Hahn, Steve Ray, Father Bill Casey, and many others. Why? Because I want to avoid hell and I want to avoid the devil. So that's why I'm giving this $20 DVD away. You can get it for free and just pay the shipping. Call 877-526-2151. That's 877-526-2151. If you want to get one of our shirts that we always say, I'm too blessed to be stressed and I'm too anointed to be disappointed, call that number, 877-526-2151, or go to CatholicRC.org. When we come back, we're going to continue to talk with Zachary King, former Satanist.
You're listening to the Terry and Jesse Show. Terry just knocked off a couple of push-ups. I just did a couple of pull-ups.
Amen.
This is the Lord's Gym. We are your spiritual fitness trainers. We've got an incredible guest on today. His name's Zachary King. He was not born and raised in the Catholic faith. In fact, he was born in the Baptist tradition, but he was more of a secular humanist. He got recruited. He's telling the story about the way he got recruited into Satanism, and they did it very shrewd. The way they recruited a young man into Satanism, and eventually he worked his way up into being a high wizard in the Church of Satan. He's going to be telling you this himself. I just want to mention to you that we're going to have a second hour with Zach today, because if you have kids that are listening to the radio, we're probably going to be getting into some things that kids probably shouldn't listen to, at least not yet, or you could do so at your discretion. And specifically in the second hour on the podcast, we're going to get into the way he used to perform satanic rituals inside abortion clinics. That's probably not something we're going to be saying on the radio. You're going to have to listen to that second half on the podcast. And by the way, the podcast is stjoe.net. We go deep on the podcast. Last week we put out a podcast, What the Popes and Saints have to say about Islam, the way they've denounced Islam thunderously. Popes, in fact, 19 popes and saints who have thunderously denounced Islam. There's another podcast there, how to really dismantle the seamless garment theory, if you want to hear that. And Terry, go ahead.
You bet. I just want to say, before Zachary keeps his promise in telling us his story, that podcast starting September 8th, everybody, we're going to have the app for your smartphones where you can stream it simultaneously. You won't have to wait until Terry and Jesse finish the podcast. And I want to thank those who have helped us financially to get to that podcast and the streaming of it. If you want a copy of today's show, because I know once this story, you can get 2 free copies, share it with a friend, call 877-526-2151. That's 877-526-2151. Zachary, I'm at the edge of my chair. Please continue, brother.
Okay. So, at 12 years old, I'm fully submerged in everything that they've got me doing, which is everything is fun, and this kid one time, about my same age, says, did you know you're in the Satanic Coven? And I was like, oh, there's no way this is a Satanic Coven. I've seen all those movies from the 70s. I love those movies from the 70s and the 60s, and, Mask of the Red Death with Vincent Price, and then all the Christopher Lee type movies. And no, it's just like, there's no way. Those things are so dark and scary. and everything in here, everything's about fun. Just whatever you want to do, And so I went to one of the older adults, and I was like, hey, I kind of heard somebody told me this was a satanic coven. That's not true, right? And he's like, well, actually, it is true, but you're having a lot of fun, aren't you? And I was like, well, yeah, I'm having a great time. And he's like, well, would you like to be a full-time member? Because you're not a member yet. You're coming here, but you don't actually belong here. Would you like to belong? And I was like, well, I'd love to belong. What do I have to do? And he's like, well, there's 13 steps to being a Satanist. You've done practically all of them. You just have a couple of things left to do. So my final things to do was that I had to cut my thumb and put my thumbprint in blood on a document. And I also had to sign it in blood. Oof. And the document was basically that I was selling my soul to the devil. Now, again, this is impossible to do, but like I said before, 13 years old, you're not the sharpest tack. So I
All right, I think we lost Zachary just for a second. This is an amazing story, folks. Just like yesterday, I gave copies of yesterday's show away. I want to make sure you share it with your young people. This is teenagers and young adults. An amazing story of Zachary telling how he got involved into the occult. If you want 2 copies of it, just call the toll-free number 877-526-215. We're having a little technical difficulty, but we'll get Zach right back. Jess, your turn. Okay, so we're having a little difficulty with both people. It's the only one. You know what? Doesn't surprise me. What are we talking on? We're talking about the devil. Guess what? He'll do whatever he can to get in our way. Zachary, are you back with us?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Let's continue. We're having a little technical difficulty, but that's to be expected. Go ahead, brother.
All right, so the document I signed that I had to sign in blood and put my bloody thumbprint on said that the blood of Jesus washes away all sin, but not mine. And Jesus died for everybody, but not me. And that I'm selling my soul to the devil, and that there's nothing I can ever do to get it back. There's no point in me ever going to church.
Wow.
I can't ever call out to God. To me, God is dead, and to God, I'm dead. There's no way there's any contact going on with God. God cannot save me because I've sold my soul. I don't have it anymore. And then they submerge you fully in this is the next day, because you sign this document one day. The next day, they submerge you in a vat of pig's blood, human blood, and human urine. And they fully submerge you, bring you back up. Now, at that time, I was wearing a white robe, and that signifies that I'm innocent and that I'm losing my innocence. I go into another room and I take a shower, and I come back out in a black robe, and that's signifying that I am baptized into a world of darkness. I sit on a chair, and I face the crowd, and my cowl is pulled up over my head. And they read off this document that I signed the night before. Then they hand me a wooden crucifix inside of a wheel. It's about 13 inches in diameter. And I'm holding the wheel. I turn the crucifix upside down, which is a symbol for human sacrifice, and I break the arms downward, which is symbolic of denouncing Christ.
Wow.
Now, if you had an imagination enough to look at this wheel that's got a crucifix in it and it's upside down and the arms are broken, that makes the peace sign. They then put your signed document in with that, and they lock this away in a vault where they claim that your soul is now tied to this and Satan owns your soul. And at that, you pull the cowl down so that everybody can see your face, and you're officially a Satanist.
Wow.
I continue.
Zachary, about how old were you? Zachary, about how old were you? What you just described right now, about how old were you when you went through this black satanic pseudo baptism?
13.
Whoa. Continue, please. This is amazing. Zachary, go right ahead.
Okay, so hey, you may not want me to talk about what I did at 14 because
we can hold off on that. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that you did in the podcast, but this is so graphic and so amazing. The bottom line, Zachary, is so many people listening are going, we've heard about the devil, And, I'll be honest with you, isn't it like Flip Wilson? The devil made me do it. It's just a figment of my imagination. Heck no! Zachary, what you're telling everybody is the devil is real. So continue, please.
The devil is real, and he's just a huge pile of crap. So skipping ahead through that, if you look at, as I say in my DVDs and other things, that by the time I was 15, I had broken all 10 commandments. That includes all 10 commandments. Wow. And I continued doing magic. That's what I wanted to do. One night in my satanic coven, I saw this guy come in that he just looked super cool. He had like a black top hat and a tuxedo, but it was really old school. Mm-hmm. And he had on like a painted face, and he just looked awesome, almost like a superhero or something. But he looked at me and winked and went into a room. Never found out who he was or what was going on with that. Well, eventually I graduated from high school, and my Baptist church that I belonged to, all the deacons in that, the majority of the deacons at my Baptist church belonged to my satanic coven. And all of them tried to get me to join the Freemasons. But I didn't know that the Freemasons was a satanic group. If I'd have joined, I'd have that story to tell as well.
Wow.
But I didn't know there was satanic, so I was like, why would I belong to this? That just sounds stupid to belong to something like that, like a boys' club or something. So I didn't join that, but, I was looking for, I grew up in a small town, and it was okay, I grew up in a small town, and this satanic coven was really big. 120 members is a huge satanic coven. Mm. So how am I going to find something in a big city? I mean, do I post a message somewhere and hope that, I'm not attacked by the Baptists or something? I mean, how do you find a satanic coven in a big city? Well, I went to college in the big city, and my college on Wednesdays had a student union. And the student union, they have the student union all year round, but on Wednesdays, all the political and social groups would come out and recruit. And so there was the Baptists and the Presbyterians had their student union. I think there was a Catholic student union too. And then there was a gay student union, and there was, everything that you would imagine would be there was there. And then there was also, I think, a Wiccan student union and a satanic student union.
Wow.
And I was like, well, this is awesome. It's right here in the middle of the school. I mean, my parents never told me that, this is what you're going to be faced with at school. This was 1985 or 86, something like that. So, I go up there and I'm just like, oh, this is awesome. Let me sign up here. So you go to their recruitment day, and they think that Satanism is all about having sex and getting drunk and taking drugs. Now, those things are all draws of Satanism, but that's not what I wanted. I had heard that there was a satanic group out there out to rule the world. And I thought, if that really exists, I would love to be a member of that.
Zachariah, hang on 1 second, brother. We got another break. We're right at the edge of our chair talking about going to college and running into a satanic group. Zachary's describing right now how he got involved with that. So when we come back, we'll ask him to continue. If you want to get a copy of today's show, 2 copies, I think you should give them to your friends and family, because it's basically saying the devil's real. And here's a good example. He's Exhibit A. Call 877-526-2151 to get a copy. 2 copies I want to give away. Call 877-526-2151 or go online to catholicrc.org. When we come back, we're going to continue to hear Zachary tell his story, how he fell into Satanism. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Terry and Jesse Show. We are interviewing Zachary King. For those of you that are just joining us, Zachary King was born and raised in the Baptist tradition, but he was more of a secular humanist. He was recruited very early on in his life at the age of 10.
Yeah, really.
They recruited him into the Church of Satan, and they did it by appealing to his our fallen nature, concupiscence, pleasure, fun. Zachary King eventually became so immersed in the occult. In fact, he spent 26 years in the occult, and in Satanism, he ended up becoming a high-ranking wizard in the Church of Satan. And he's talking about his conversion. By the way, if you have young kids, we would probably ask you to remove them from the radio for the next 30 minutes because we're talking about things that, I don't know, it may be too sensitive for young people, talking about witchcraft and Satanism and divination. By the way, everybody's homework that's listening to the radio show today, here's your homework. I want you to read in the Catechism 2115. 2115 of the Catechism. It tells you what the church teaches about magic and divination. So if you want to hear what the Catholic Church teaches about the occult, about superstition, about divination, about magic, about these hidden occult powers, clairvoyance, read 2115 of the Catechism. That way you can know exactly what the church teaches and you can know what to teach your kids. Zachary, so when did you become a high wizard within Satanism? If you can tell us briefly, how did you become a high wizard?
But Zachary, before you do that, my friend, at the end of the break, you were talking about going to a college meeting where there were some Satanists, and then I had to break. Can you just, everybody's sitting on the edge of their chair. Please tell us what happened at that meeting.
At the first meeting, it was, as I had said, it was everybody was trying to have sex or take drugs or get drunk. And
wow.
I recognized that as satanic tools, but I wasn't interested in that. I'd done that for, like the last 7 years or whatever. So I'd heard there was a satanic cult that was out to rule the world, and that's what I was looking for. So I contacted my original cults, and I told them what I wanted. And, they put me in contact with Satan's World Church. And when I went there, they had a position called a High Wizard, and that was the guy that I had seen years before at my coven that was, dressed like I had said.
Mm-hmm.
And that they have, at that time, I think they had about 8 of them. There's between 1 and 10 in the world. Generally, there's about 2 to 5.
Wow.
Generally, one of them has to die off before they will get somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Rumor has it that Satan handpicks you. Satan decides who's going to be the High Wizard. The World Church of Satan is run by a CEO and a board of directors. The CEO will send word to you. You come and sit before the board of directors. They ask you a bunch of questions. They give you a booklet. It's kind of a how-to guide of what you're doing, kind of a loose outline, so to speak.
Amazing.
And in it you learn things like you, in theory, are not in a position of power. You do all the magic for the coven. You and however many other high wizards there are, who you will never meet. So no 2 of you will ever be in the same place at the same time. All of you do all the magic that different organizations will come to you and want magic from your coven. You're the person who will be doing that for them. Now, you can tell anybody no. You can raise whatever the price is. You're not getting any of this price. I mean, if it's $1 million to do a spell and you say you want $2 million, well, great. Now the coven gets $2 million. You still don't get any of that. But you can tell somebody no for a spell. You can change the details of the spell. And you have multiple places that you travel across the entire year and across the entire world, where at different times of the year you could be anywhere.
Wow.
As well as you could be home. You could be home for the majority of what you're doing, but not over the course of time. Maybe in the course of a year you'd be there for like maybe 9 months. But normally you are traveling all over the world doing these things. I was in that coven for about 2 years before I became the High Wizard,
wow.
Which is crazy young. I was like 21. Most High Wizards are picked when they're in their 40s or 50s, or even older. And so I got to do this. And while I'm doing this, in the course of my 26 years in Satanism, I did 146 abortions. And I also split. The goal isn't to decimate a church, to just bring it to ruin. The goal is to split a committee, and generally if the committee splits, then there's a good chance the church will split. And you're not even looking for a 50-50 split. You're just looking for a group of people to leave the church, because once that happens, the church falls into scandal. No one wants to
Zachary,
join
how
the
was it
church.
Go ahead,
Zachary, how was it that you would split these churches? I mean, are Satanists particularly taught like you to go up and do split these churches? And what do you mean by split them?
There's three types of teams for the Baptist Church. I'm guessing that there are also three types for the Catholic Church, but I'm not sure because my teams didn't deal with the Catholic Church. I know that there are three types within Satanism, within organized Satanism. You got to think of three houses, each with their back to the other church, with the other houses, and then each house with a privacy fence. So the people that are working splitting Baptist churches don't know that there's another house that splits Catholic churches. And neither of those know that there's another house that puts out material that's either atheistic, New Age, or communistic in nature. And they just pump that material out just as much as they can. Remember that Satan, although being an egotistical being, would love it if everybody worshiped him. His ultimate goal is to make it so that nobody worships God. So whether you worship Satan or not, he doesn't really care. Don't worship God, that's the goal. In a Baptist church, one of the scandals is monetary. One of them would be sexual misconduct, a preacher sleeping with a 15 or 16-year-old girl, or associate pastor, a music minister, somebody like that. And then the third method, which is my group's method, was gossip. And I know that some people out there listening are going, oh, gossip's no big deal. I gossip once in a while. You, my friend, need to go to confession because that's a mortal sin. And we would come in. I'm not the leader of this team. It's just whoever's turn it is, that's who's going in. So you go in, you try and join a committee. Usually you come in presenting yourself as something you're not, usually somebody with a lot of money, a lot of houses, or a huge house and a lot of cars. You go in, you get on the committee, and, like Jesse and Terry are the president and vice president, so I go to Jesse and I hang out with him for the day and I hear how he says stuff all day long. And maybe he ends a phrase every once in a while with, it's all good. So then I go to Terry and I hang out with him and I tell him something Jesse said about him in confidence. So you can't tell him, you can't go back to him and tell him that he said this, and I'm telling you. But he ended it with, it's all good. Well, now Terry knows, okay, Jesse probably did say that about me. So I just keep that going back and forth. I do a lot of back and forth stuff, and I talk to the committee. Now, I know this all sounds very juvenile. It sounds like high school. It sounds like a bunch of gossiping girls in high school, and that's what it is. But it works. Don't knock the system because it works. Once
Zach,
you've done this a lot, you stir up. Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jess.
Zach, let me, just for the purposes of the audience, can you define to us what a coven is? Because you've used that word several times, C-O-V-N. What is a coven? About how many members are in a coven? And, just give us a little bit of the history behind a coven.
A coven is just a group of witches. It's a group of people that get together for a common goal, but that goal is generally satanic or witchcraft in nature. Satan has defined what most people think a coven. When they think of a coven, they think of 13 people. And there are so many covens throughout history that had 13 people. But Satan, I like to call him the first Protestant, will let you create a coven of any size. I mean, let's say one of you is a total nerd, total geek, and no one anywhere will follow anything that you would ever say. You could have a coven of one. As well as, if you were super popular and you couldn't just decide, well, these are the only 12 other people I want, I have 300 people that are willing to do my bidding, well, you could have a coven of 300. The size of the coven doesn't matter. You can have a coven of any size. As I said, Satan has kind of duped people into thinking, well, a coven has to be 13, so if they hear about a crime being committed and they can't put 13 people together for doing that, then they may not think a coven was involved.
Got it.
But that could have been one person that decided to do that crime, and they would be in a coven of one. That's one of
Zachary,
the reasons that in the world...
Yes.
Yes. In the
Zachary,
World Church of
we want to hold off. Yeah, Zach, hold on a second. We want to hold off on the abortion rituals on the podcast. We don't want to mention that yet. So
Right.
we'll save that for the next hour. But I want to ask you a question. We're going to be going to a break right now, so just respond after the break. You've used the word magic several times. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience are saying, okay, well, I play with cards and stuff, and I do kind of this innocuous magic. So after the break, I want you to tell the audience the difference between magic with a C and magic with a K. But we're going to go to a quick break right now, so hold on. You're listening to the Terry and Jesse Show.
Yeah, and you want to get a copy of today's show, we'll give 2 copies of it to share with your friends and family. You just call 877-526-2151. If you want our DVD, What Every Catholic Needs to Know About Hell, with Dr. Scott Hahn, we'll give that away too. 877-526-2151. Go to CatholicRC.org and get all our goodies and giveaways. When we come back, Zachary's going to talk about the difference between magic. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Terry and Jesse Show. We're interviewing Zachary King. By the way, we're going to do a second hour with him where we're going to go into depth as to the way abortion and Satanism, they interface. And Zachary's going to really just go deep in the second hour. You don't want to miss it. Let me just mention real quick that September 9th, that's next week, I'm going to be speaking at the Legatus over at the Arizona Country Club. That's in Phoenix, Arizona, after the 5:30 p.m. Holy Mass. Also, next Saturday, September 12th, I'm going to be at St. Mary Magdalene Parish in Gilbert, Arizona from 9 to 10 a.m. Doing the speaker series. I'm going to be talking about the dangers of secular humanism. And also at the St. Mary Magdalene Parish, September 18th, I will be there, which is on a Friday night from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. I'll be talking about the covenant of love. I'll be doing a comparison between the sacrament of marriage, cohabitation, so-called homosexual marriage, and Islamic marriage. And I think we want to share a little bit about what a podcast is. Some people are asking what a podcast is.
We're getting emails. Podcasts are basically recordings of our shows that are on our website and will be on our iPhones starting September 11th. So you can actually go with your smartphone and just listen to the show 24/7 anywhere in the world. That's what we're working on. Zachary, please tell us about what you said about magic. We were just, before the break, you were going to explain the differences. Go right ahead, my friend.
All right. So magic spelled with a C is like a child's birthday party or Doug Henning or anybody that just does sleight of hand or pulling a rabbit out of a hat and things like that.
Sure.
Magic spelled with a CK is Aleister Crowley spoke about. He spoke about sex magic, but it's satanic magic. So if you're doing magic where you're doing a card trick or you're pulling something out of a hat, it's real magic. So you most likely wouldn't be doing something like that. It's more of cursing somebody, doing a hex, doing a spell of some kind. And there's spells for pretty much anything, and they're any type of spell. Even the Wiccans claim that they only do white or light magic. If you'll notice in the Bible, there's no distinction. Magic is bad no matter what it is. In the Old Testament, you're stoned to death for it. In the New Testament, you don't inherit the kingdom of God.
Amen.
Take your pick.
Wow.
Zachary, I've got another question for you. When was the Church of Satan founded here in the United States? Was it in fact founded by a person called Anton Lavey here in San Francisco, or does it, or was there somebody else before him?
The first Church of Satan was founded by Anton Lavey. Now, they claim to be atheistic in nature, but I really don't believe any Satanist that claims to be an atheist. There's reasons for that, though. It's usually an atheistic satanic cult that steals the consecrated host. Well, if they're an atheist, they don't believe in the consecrated host. They don't believe in the host at all. So, I tell people it's almost like a joke. You can go to some Catholic stores and buy a box of unconsecrated hosts, and it's like 100 of them for $10.
Yep.
What's to stop any of us from doing that And then a consecrated host, sells for between $1,500 and $15,000.
Wow.
So let's take that box of 100, take it to a satanic coven, and say, hey, as a bargain to you today, I'm willing to sell you all these hosts for only $1,000 each. That'd be $100,000. They would save at least $500 each on them, and this would be a bargain for them. Do you know why they won't buy them?
They know the difference.
Because they can tell the difference.
Yep.
Right. They can tell the difference in a consecrated and an unconsecrated host.
Yep.
How in the world is that possible if they're an atheist and don't believe in God?
Well said.
There's no marking on a consecrated host. Most Catholics, I would almost say all, but I won't limit it to all, but I'd say most Catholics could not tell the difference.
Yep. You're right.
Zachary, can you tell us the difference between is there such a thing as a theistic Satanist and an atheistic Satanist? Is there such a distinction?
Atheistic Satanists claim that they don't believe in God or the devil. They took the name Satanist because it's the worst title they know. It's the worst thing to be called, and it's offensive. And what they really believe in is a free society where your laws are not on their bodies. So if they want to go get an abortion every day, they're going to go do that. If they want to speed, they can do that. They shouldn't be pulled over for secular laws. They shouldn't have to account for anything that they don't want any law to apply to them, but certainly not something that's morals. That they should not be subject to your morals. They should be subject to their own morals, which they really have none. So, Aleister Crowley and Anton Lavey subscribe to a notion of do what thou wilt within the whole of the law. Now, it sounds like what they're saying is you can do anything that's legal. But what they're really saying is you can do anything if you don't get caught doing it.
Wow.
Zachary, we've only got about 2 minutes before we go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just finish on your other one. Yeah, go ahead, Jess or Zach.
Theistic Satanists believe in God, but they usually have a skewed view of how God is portrayed. So they don't really subscribe to the God of the Bible. They subscribe to their own view, and they usually put their God, Satan, above the true God.
Well said. Before we ask the next question, I want to let everybody know we're going to go another hour with Zachary, but we're going to tie the issue of abortion and Satanism together. And you're going to say, wow, this is something we don't want to cover on the air right now, but after the show, we're going to put it on our podcast, and you can go to St. Joe, was it .com, Jesse? I always remember that. It's St. Joe what?
.net, stjoe.net, stjoe.net.
What's the final question, Jesse, before we got to roll?
Zachary, obviously, let's end it up on a high note. When did you come into the Catholic Church? Who was it? A Catholic nun that basically gave you a miraculous medal, and did that start your journey into the Catholic Church? Can you give us that briefly in about 2 minutes before the show ends?
January 2008, a woman named Ann Whitman. She was Father Joe Whalen's assistant in the St. Raphael Healing Oil Ministry. Came up and basically put a miraculous medal in my hands, quenching that, not believing that this had any power whatsoever. My mall and my store disappeared, and the Blessed Mother appeared to me. She turned me around, and there was Jesus. And I accepted Jesus as God and realized in that moment that everything Catholic was true. I opened my hand up, and I was back in my mall. Marianne still talking to me, and that got me into the Catholic Church.
Zach, I'm telling you, brother, I went to Rudebach where Our Lady appeared to the saint regarding the miraculous medal, and there are stories like Alphonse Ratisbon have similar stories back in the 19th century. I think it's great that miracles are still happening today, and you're one of those. And when we do our podcast, it's going to take a couple hours to get it up onto the website for people because I know they're going to want to hear it immediately. But your story's phenomenal. Now that you're a Catholic and you believe in the sacraments and you're writing your book, I'm going to tell everybody we're booking Zach to come to California in early January with Jesse and another priest who's talking on spiritual warfare.
January 16th.
January 16th?
January 16th.
And we're going to do it Friday the 15th also. So I think it would be great. But, Zach, what would you like to say before we end this first hour to Catholics who say, Well, I never heard anybody talk like this. In other words, I thought the devil was just kind of like he leaves people alone. I mean, what advice would you give mom and dad who, sometimes have their kids playing with some of these occult things? What would you tell mom and dad to do as a precaution for them to stay away from this satanic material? What advice would you give?
I'd say, first of all, if you're not sure if it's satanic or not, my email address and my phone number are on my website, allsaintsministry.org.
Excellent.
Contact me and ask. If you don't know, ask. Don't just throw the stuff away. As well as if you're going to take all your child's stuff away, you got to replace it with something else.
Amen.
You can't just take it and leave a bad taste in the child's mouth about religion. You got to give them something for it. You can't be afraid of the devil. Think of the devil as a barking dog on a leash. You don't step within that leash length, you're not going to get bit. But you got to watch out for Satan's pitfalls. They are everywhere, and they involve everything. It's like even the most innocent thing, like angel cards. People are like, oh, those are okay. It's like think tarot cards. It's like Satan infiltrates every possible thing he can because there's so many people out there, and he's got to lay as many traps as he can to try and get all of us. Stick close to the Catholic faith. Satan hates and fears a well-informed Catholic.
Zachary, you are amazing. Folks, we're going to do another hour with Zach, but if you want a copy of today's show, 2 copies I'll give you, one for you, one for your friend. Call 877-526-2151. That's 877-526-2151. And again, we call this spiritual fitness equipment. Yes, that's what we're giving away. You need a barbell? Well, we call them spiritual fitness equipment spiritually. So pick up these CDs, pick up the DVD, What Every Catholic Needs to Know About Hell by Dr. Scott Hahn by calling 877-526-2151. Go to stjoe.net to hear the podcast in a couple of hours. If you want, again, copies of the show, call 877-526-2151. Zachary, I'm looking forward to the next hour, brother. Thanks for your service. We'll be right back, folks. As I say, full sheen ahead.